Hi, everybody. Welcome to Walk Worthy. I'm Erin.
And I'm Lindsay. And today we're going to be talking about adversity. So trials, testing, things that we go through that are difficult.
Anything's hard, yeah.
Yes. So James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 is where we're going to start, and then we'll kind of go from there. So it says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing."
I always look at those first three words, consider it all joy. Like, how well do you think you do at considering it all joy?
I think sometimes I try to pretend,
I want to be joyful.
It's like I'm trying to will myself to it.
Yeah.
But that's fake.
Yeah.
That's not real. It's like I'm being, choosing joy, but is that joy?
It's more like, I think in my life, it's more like, it's fine, everything's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not joy.
It's not, that's not what joy is. I think a lot of times we try to
It's the emoji face that's like the crooked smile. Exactly what I think about.
Yeah, it's like a grin and bear it type of thing, and we call that joy, and I don't think that's what joy is.
No.
So I would say
bad to quite bad?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I would say even just reading this and studying through this made me realize I think sometimes my joy is just because I know I'm supposed to be joyful. Mm-hmm. So it's I'm going to be joyful, but that's just me telling myself I am. It's not real. It's not coming from inside.
I think I do better at retroactive joy. When it's over and then I look back and I'm like, I can see the fruit.
Agreed.
I can see what happened.
Thank God.
Thank the Lord. Even though it was hard, that's alongside of it. But, then I feel like I'm more joyful.
Yes. Because we can see the way out or the end of the story.
Or the why kind of.
Yes.
But in the middle of it, it can just be hard.
Yeah.
But I also was thinking that in trying to, you kind of have a pull yourself up by your bootstraps, all right, it's fine, I'll weather the storm. Mm-hmm. And I think in that too, there almost comes a place where I'll do that for a while, and then there's the inevitable crash where you're like, fine, I hate this, I can't do this, this is too long and too hard. And I feel like until that moment, I don't think the Lord really has space to work, because I'm so busy faking that I'm fine that there really isn't. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You're just you think you're abiding and you think you're surrendering, you think you're in it, we're fine, but it really is derived of my own strength.
Exactly. You're not dependent on him for it.
I'm trying to be.
Yes,
but it's not real.
It's not, you think you are, but it's more just lip service. It's not actually doing it.
Yeah. And there's honesty, I think, in that crash where you're finally I guess I can't do this. I guess I don't have the strength. And sometimes I think that's what God's waiting for, to be I know. So look up and we'll do it together.
And I think a lot of times too, there's an expectation to be fine.
Yes.
Because we're Christians.
Yes.
Because we have the truth. Because we do know the truth. And we know it. Mm-hmm. It's not that we don't believe it.
Yeah.
It's just we're human. Mm-hmm. And it's okay that you have emotions. It's okay that you're struggling. God sees you and he wants to help you through that. And I think sometimes we think we just have to get to where we're supposed to be instead of being no, this is where I really am. And God, I need you to get me there.
Yes. And you'll check on people in the church. We'll have conversations with people in the church, whoever you're talking to, and who they're going through a hard time. And it can be hard, and I'm not judging anyone because I can be this too. It can be hard to get someone to admit the place that they're at because they're it's hard, but it's fine. And, there's this glossing over of where you actually are. And it is okay to say, I'm just kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And you see that. I love the Psalms for that, because David goes and wallows in crazy places, and then inevitably at the end of the psalm, he'll be but God is God, wait for the Lord, be strong, let your heart take courage, because we know it in there. But even though you know what is true, even when I'm struggling in my darkest moment, if I had someone come in and tell me a bunch of verses, I already know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
I can quote the end of the verse, start it for me.
Yeah.
But it still has a hard time in the emotion of it.
Yes.
I don't care.
And
I'm just mad.
And just understanding that God is loving and he knows you're struggling. You're not going to hide that from him. So take it to him and let him be the one that picks you up and walks you through it. And you kind of have to, I know for me, when I've had, you get bad news about somebody in your family, they have a sickness or something like that, which has happened a few times for me. I just kind of have to wrestle. I'm wrestling God, which is just I'm trying. I know I'm supposed to believe this, but I don't feel that right now. So and that's okay. I think a lot of times we just don't allow like God is like way more gracious than we even know he is, and like way more loving than we give him credit for. I think sometimes we think he just wants us to like, hop to it. Like, you know that I'm God, so trust me. But like, he's so kind, and like, he'll walk us through it and like give us the power that we need. Like, we're never gonna do that without his spirit in us anyway, because it's not going to happen naturally.
And I think the wrestling is important, because I think that's where we get to the basement of what we feel, even the doubts that we have.
Yeah, what do we really believe about God?
And what we're scared, who we think his character is. And I think that made me think about Elijah when he had come off this great victory with the prophets of Baal. And the next thing you know, he's in the cave like, it's enough, oh Lord, take my life,
Yes.
Which I love that too, because he is this great man of faith. He's one of the few prophets of God that's left that didn't bow the knee to Baal. And he has had this massive victory. And in the next moment, he's like, just take me home. I'm done. I want to check out. But the Lord is so gracious in that. And he has him rest. He feeds him. Yeah. And then he comes to him in a whisper. And it just shows the kindness of the Lord to deal with us, because he does know our weakness, that we are just a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that verse that says, like, a broken and contrite heart you will not despise. Like, God's not mad at you when you're broken. Like, he loves you, and he's the only one that is able to help. So like, take it to him.
That's good.
Yeah.
So trials, though, this also says various trials. So sometimes when I read this, I have to remind myself, it's not just the major health crisis. Right. It's not just, like you're about to get your house foreclosed on or something. It is various trials. So it could be small ones. It could be big ones. To me, adversity is anything that rubs up against us at all. Yeah. And I often think of polishing like granite or a diamond, as a very hard stone, and it requires something grinding against it to polish it to the shine that it needs to be. It talks about our faith being like gold that's refined through fire, so all of that's uncomfortable, but that could be something as simple as your kid spilling their milk, and then okay, how am I going to respond to this?
Yes, am I going to explode? Trial, right? But there's probably been several leading up to it.
Yes, and sometimes those little things we pay less attention to because they're just small character issues or small responses to things, but we get more ready for the big one, where we're more prayed up for that one. Okay, Lord, help me. But the day-to-day, the small ones, which are trials nonetheless, opportunities to prove my patience, my kindness, my love, my joy, we don't pay attention to those as well. But all of that is covered under various trials. All of that is adversity. Anything that makes us a little bit uncomfortable or a lot of it uncomfortable is adversity.
Right. Well, and even too, in that word, various trials, it can also mean like temptations. And it's, that's not coming from God. That's going to come from us or from something the enemy is doing. So those things too, and the ability to we should be thankful for those things too, because they build our faith. They help us overcome. They, like you said, they sharpen us or prove, like, are we even real?
Right. Yeah. And this says, what does that say? Knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. So the trial, the temptation, the adversity tests or proves our faith. And I think about, the Bible talks about us being athletes, some in various places. And I think about how athletes train, but if you never are tested, you don't really know how strong you are, how fast you are. You think like, I can squat some weight. Well, how much? Yeah. You don't know until you try, and then there comes a place where you fail. Like, okay, that was the limit.
Yeah, that was it.
That's it. I can't do any more. Yeah. But it requires that resistance against that. And our faith is the same. It requires the resistance, not only to build it stronger, but also to prove if it's even real. Because we think like, I'd die for the Lord. Oh, would you? Okay. Right. What happens when you actually get in that moment? That's going to prove whether what you say is true or not.
Absolutely. Wow.
And proving to
that's a dramatic example, Erin. Okay. Put me in my place. Like, woo. That's true.
And it proves it to us, to the Lord, and to other people. So it's a proof of what is real. Because we all talk a big game.
Of course.
But it doesn't take a lot of resistance before all of a sudden we're not so godly, myself so included.
True. Yeah. Somebody cuts you off and you're like mad. Like one little thing. It just has to be the right thing.
Yes.
And we're not as good as we say that we are, or we think that we are.
That's right.
I think one thing that probably like the most common question when someone comes up against something is, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? We immediately kind of like play that victim card, like, really, God?
Do you not love me?
Yeah, like exactly. We immediately go that way. And so I think it would be beneficial to people to talk about, like, why do certain things come in. And I think it's like really difficult to see that reason until, like you said, retroactively you can look back and be like, okay, I can see the why. We're very rarely going to have the actual why in the moment. But these, I think, are some like encouraging ones that if you could think like maybe God is doing this, that they can kind of help carry you through.
Yeah.
So the first being that like Satan often attacks when we're doing something well, you know, maybe we're really like trying to abide in the Lord. Maybe we're really being effective in ministry in some way, like in some relationship, or maybe we're sharing the gospel a lot with people that we know. And like he hates that. So he will attack those things. I think that you can be, I mean, obviously if you haven't been really being effective, that's probably not the reason.
Might not be your reason.
But like if you feel like, God, I felt like I've been really trying to like serve you and like do what you've called me to do. Well, like it's not like God is punishing you for being faithful, but there might be somebody else coming against you.
I mean, look at the life of Paul, and he's got lists in places like I was in prison this many times, I was beaten this many times, I was shipwrecked and left in the deep for a day and a night. I think I was beaten and left for dead. All these different things because he was effective for the gospel, and so that did cause persecution to come against his life, and that was the reason for the trial. You know, God obviously used that for other reasons to take him to different places and build a testimony, but there was, in a very way, an enemy that was coming against him to try to stop him. So that can be a reason that we face trial. Another reason is for correction of sin, which is one we don't really love. But we, you know, you think about children, and the reason I correct my children is because they're doing something wrong. Like, hey, don't go that way, go this way. Hey, you can't do that. Don't say that. Don't act like that. Because I am trying to train them into being godly people, in the way of righteousness. And so that does require correction. And we're the same, but we no longer have earthly parents over us in the same way. Now it's our Heavenly Father who doesn't miss anything, who sees everything, and who does know the motive of our hearts perfectly.
That's what I was going to say, like, because a lot of times he's not correcting necessarily an outward behavior, at least in my experience. It's not necessarily an outward behavior. It's very much like a heart condition. Like, you didn't see this. You didn't see what you were assuming or thinking. You didn't see this area of pride. Like, you know, you struggle with some other areas of pride, but you didn't really see this one. And then you kind of like walk through something and you're like, don't understand, like, why is God... you know, why is he doing this to me? We all kind of ask that same question. We assume God is like, I don't know, torturing us or something. But then you kind of get to the other side of it. And I know for myself, like looking back, I can see like, oh, I was prideful in that area. I didn't even know. I didn't even see it. Like I was so blind to it, but I can see now that like I was not dependent on the Lord. I thought, oh, I'm just going to do this. And like, that'll be cool. It wasn't like a bad thing. It was just my heart was wrong. And it was assuming that I could do it. I could handle it. And looking back now, just seeing that, it has just caused me to be so thankful to God, which, again, it kind of takes a while to get to that point. Like, I was not like that in the midst of it. But looking back, I'm just, like, so thankful for what he's taught me. And the... in Hebrews 12, it says, for those whom the Lord loves, he disciplines, and he scourges every son whom he receives. And if we could look at the Lord's discipline as a sign of his love, like, you love your kids. So of course, that's why you discipline them and want to like guide them to be the people that God has called them to be. God loves us. That's why he disciplines us. So if I can look at his discipline through that lens of love instead of like my lens of like, you know, like you're a little kid and you're like, my mommy's mean, you know, and like that's how we look at God. We act the same way. But if we can look at him as like, wow, I'm so glad that like God cared enough about me to like change this in my heart, even though it was really hard. I'm so thankful that he cared enough to do it. I think, I don't know, he's really taught me that, and it's really powerful.
Well, and a loving parent, for me, I don't love disciplining my kids. I feel bad, you know, like sometimes there's something that happens and you have to mete out a punishment that feels extreme, you know, like you can't do this for 2 weeks or, you know, whatever. And then a week later I'm like, well, I feel bad. And I'm like, I got to stick to what I said. I got to do what I said. But it's hard because you see your child suffer in a sense. And and they're fine. Ultimately, really,
you can hang out with your friends.
Right. Oh, sorry. But for them, that is real suffering in the moment, even though I'm like, you're fine.
Yeah.
But it is hard, and it is, there's the temptation to pull back the discipline, but I know if I do, the change won't take effect. It won't have the same impact, because I think in order to change, there has to be pain. We have to feel like, oh, this is really hard and really hurts, and I'm not going to do this again because I remember when I was chastened by the Lord or my parent. And so sometimes the pain of the trial or the testing or the adversity is required to make us remember to stop sinning.
Yeah.
It has to be equal to the sin.
Yeah. I love further down in Hebrews 12 and verse 11, it says, all discipline for the moment seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. Yet to those who have been trained by it, afterwards it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. So it's kind of that same idea of after you get through it, if you allow it to train you, because also sometimes we can we can get disciplined and I'm doing it again.
Yes.
And like you said, the point is to feel the pain, the discomfort. It says it's what does it say? Sorrowful for the moment.
Yeah.
The point is to feel that and oh, I don't want to feel that again. But we're dumb sometimes and we just do it again.
So dumb. Yes. Yes.
But if you allow yourself to be trained by it, and when you're in a trial, let God have his work. It's so much better to just let him do what he wants to do instead of fighting him on it.
Yeah.
Then it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness if you allow yourself to be trained by it.
And that's something I have taken to praying in recent years when I'm going through something that I feel like I'm really in the middle of it in whatever way. You're just in the thick of something, and just asking the Lord to open my eyes and see what he's trying to show me, because we can be so veiled by our own suffering. We get so oh, what was me? And so selfish and so inward focused that we can miss what he's doing. And so asking him, Lord, help me to have eyes that can see and a heart that is sensitive to discern what you're trying to say and where I need to be corrected, because I don't care what adversity you're in, whether someone caused it in your life or you did something that created adversity or it just happened to you. There is something for you to learn in it. There always is. It talks about our faith being tested. Well, let me read this in 1 Peter. It says, we greatly rejoice. There's that word again. We're greatly rejoicing, even though for a little while, if necessary, which God must have deemed it necessary in your life, you have been distressed by various trials, so that the proof of your faith, being more precious than gold, which is perishable, even though tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus. So there is something in every single trial. This says, and the other, when we read in James, it said, let it have its result, because there is a result that it is supposed to have. So if we allow that to happen, then God will work with that trial to produce fruit in us. And he has... even the things that are hard, even the places where I feel like someone has wronged me, I have to have the humility to say, okay, Lord, but show me something through this, because you've allowed this in my life and you will not cause pain without purpose.
And something else too that I think sometimes we can never, or we lessen the importance of, is we get so focused on ourselves that we don't realize how God might use our trial in somebody else's life. There are so many times when a door might be open for the gospel because you're walking through something hard, and people know it's not a secret thing that you're going through,
right?
And they're how
you try to keep it secret, which I think is ineffective to your point.
Yes, you're waste. I remember Wes did that message a long time ago. Don't waste your storm.
Yes,
you're going through something. Let God use it. Don't waste it by being oh, nobody can know what I'm going through. But if people know that, unbelievers, they don't have the power of the Holy Spirit. They don't have the Lord to lean on. They're going to be how are you walking right now? How are you functioning right now? How are you joyful right now? And we need to really see those opportunities and use those opportunities to declare well, this is really hard, but I know that God is faithful, and I know that he's going to give me the strength to get through this, and really share who he is. And the verses that talk about the house that was built on the sand, the house that was built on the rock. These are the moments when you see, because what is your foundation? And when we can point them back to who Jesus is and who our rock is, that's so effective for the gospel. So it might not be for you,
right, that
you're going through this. And are you okay with that?
Well, and so when we had our house fire several years ago, it was a very public event. I mean, it was in the local newspaper. So it was oh, this, giant house fire. And it was hard, personally, I'm a fairly private person, so it was hard to have that so like out there, because you felt like you had all these people asking questions about something that I really was in the thick of going through. You're trying to manage your house, make sure kids are fine, and like, oh, I guess everyone needs toothbrushes now. Like, it's just
and your home
insane.
is like the most like private place.
So, yes.
Like, everybody come on in.
Yes.
We have nothing.
Come take pictures. You know, you had like random people stopping by. Right. So it just in some ways felt very exposed and vulnerable, but we had talked about it because there were news interviews wanted to happen, and my inclination is like, I don't want to do that. I don't even want to talk about this. I don't want anybody else. I don't need even to go through this with the whole world, right? But we talked about it, and we were like, the Lord, and I'm not trying to say that we're do everything right. This is just this moment, okay? But we were like, the Lord has very publicly put us out there for a reason that's not great, but we can choose to use this for the gospel. And so we said yes to every single news interview. Anybody that wanted to talk to us, we said yes. And for me, that was a real sacrifice, because I was like, you know, I just want to like, just let me be in my corner and deal with this. But I did recognize that part of this trial did need to proclaim to the gospel exactly what you said, that our house was not everything. It's not the foundation of our life. Jesus is, and that still stands, even though that's in ashes. And it did give us an open door to proclaim the gospel if we take it, if we use it. And it costs us something, but we have to then believe that the gospel is bigger than we are, and people's salvation is more important than our comfort, and be willing to put ourselves out there. And I think in trial, because we are going through something hard, we have the tendency to hide, and we miss the opportunity to proclaim the gospel and what Jesus is doing and how he's sustaining, even though we are weak. Because, I mean, truly, we're just kind of selfish. And I'm the same. 100%. Like, I don't want to do that. This is hard.
Exactly. Well, and I love what you said, and that's what we have to have in mind in anything that we walk through, is like, is the mission of the gospel more important than me? Is Jesus more important than me? Is other people's salvation and them knowing who he is more important than me? And I think we would want to answer that with yes, but like, we don't live like it, and especially not when we're going through something hard. Right.
But he wants to use my house fire. He wants to use cancer. He wants to use your child's injury or illness or your financial crisis or your marital crisis to proclaim the gospel. But we don't want to let him have that.
Right.
You can't have that.
Exactly. That's, if we just need to see things differently. But it's very hard. I'm not saying it's easy.
It's not easy.
Not at all. What else does trial do? I think a lot of times it teaches us more about who God is. Like, sometimes we have a wrong view of who he is. And then when we really get in the thick of something hard, we have to depend on him. We have to seek him. If we don't, like, we're just making things harder for ourselves. But I think a lot of times God just reveals like his kindness and his goodness in the midst of things, and shows us, just gives us a deeper closeness with him. I think that's what's really beautiful about trial a lot. It's sad that we have to like get to that point of being in something so hard to take the time to spend with him and get to know him. But sometimes he just uses it for that. And I've had the exact same thing in things in my life where it's like, oh, you know, I think everything's good, and then it's not good. And it's like, okay, God, like, I really need you. And there's just like such a sweetness that comes out of it. And I always think of like the altars in the wilderness that the Israelites built. I just think that's like the most beautiful picture to look back and like see what God has done. And now I can look back and see like God just like drew me so close to him during that time, or, you know, whatever he did. It's just like such a gift. But again, it's so hard to see until you're on the other side of it, or even in the midst of it when you're just like, oh, I needed this because I've been thinking I could do it myself.
And that's if we press into him in trial. Because sometimes we have a tendency to distance and to drift, where there is no help in that. The only, like, we need to press into the Lord and let him help us and let him sustain us. And there are so many, when you do that, there are so many beautiful stories of how he met you and provided for you. There are moments that I can remember where I saw in various trial where the Lord, often through a person or a circumstance or something, something I'd been maybe wrestling with for a couple days, like, Lord, why this or how this or help this? And then he met that exact need. And often it's through somebody that I wouldn't necessarily have, like, you know, you line up all your people that are close, like, these are my support people, and it's not one of those people. And to me, I'm like, gosh, that is the Lord answering that question, because they wouldn't have known that, but he used that person to answer me. And it's a reminder that he sees us and that he does care and that we're not abandoned in trial. Because I think that's what we often are
we're
quick
abandoned.
to be like, why do you hate me?
And then we abandon him because we think he's abandoned us. And again, I think there's an idea that, like, we have to, if we're gonna pray, then like we need to be like, thank you, God, for this trial. Right. You know, like God knows your heart. God already knows that you're mad. He knows that you're upset. Like, and he like wants a closeness of a relationship with us to be able to like bring those burdens to him. He says like, cast your burdens on me. I will sustain you. Like, we don't do that because we think like, oh, I have to be like cleaned up and like my faith has got to be right if I'm going to talk to God. Like your faith's not going to be right if you don't talk to God. So just go to him in your mess.
Yes.
And I think we just think, you know, we say like, oh, you don't have to be cleaned up to come to the Lord at salvation. You know, we'll say those things like, but then when we're in relationship with him, when he has saved us, when he is our Lord, then we think we have to be cleaned up to go to him. And that's just not true.
No.
It's just not. And that's not a relationship.
No. If
I had to be like, to talk to my husband, like, I'm all together. Like, who can I be a mess in front of then? Yeah. You know, if it's not God, then can I be a mess anywhere? No, like you can be real with him and take him your burdens. It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay.
And I do think in our own lives that adversity, specifically trial, reveals what we do believe about the Lord and his character. And sometimes you if you find the basement of the anxiety or the doubt or the fear, you're like, oh, I'm afraid because I don't actually think he's going to provide for me.
Yeah.
I'm afraid because I don't think he actually sees me. I'm afraid because I don't think he actually cares for me. And that is a place that like, okay, I need to decide if I really trust the Lord or not. And that's some of the fruit. I was also thinking though on Tuesday night we have our women's Bible study. So I was teaching on a little bit of a challenging passage. And I was walking in the church building and half of you was like, oh, I hope this is fine. And, you know, you're like a little nervous about it. And like, why do I do this to myself? And then the other half of me was like, you need this in your life because if you didn't have this adversity, if you didn't have this need for the Lord, like I think my faith would become very dull. You know, I'll read tomorrow. I'll do this, you know, a different day. It's fine. I know enough things. But because there are challenges, and so if you think about adversity into places that he calls us that are scary or challenges or maybe a new job or a new workplace or you're a new parent or you're newly married, and these new things that present challenges where we kind of feel like, I hope this is fine. Yeah. But we also need those for our faith because those grow us in a different way. And I think those keep us in the fight. Because if I didn't have those things, I think it would be very easy to have a very stagnant faith.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're not really having a lot of instances where you have to be like, God, I can't do this. Like, you got to do it. And so you're not really like growing in that way. You're not really depending on him in that way. You're not seeing him work maybe in and through you like you could be, which is always going to build your faith and make you like more excited. Like, okay, God, like what else do you want to do? But if we never take that step, then.
Well, and the Bible talks about us being it talks about us boxing the air. So then I think about fighters. We watch UFC fights sometimes. And you have some fighters that stay trained in between fights. And so then they come into fight camp and they're already in shape. They're just honing the skill that they already have and they're ready for the fight. And you have other fighters that in between fight camp, it's a disaster. I mean, they're out partying, they're gaining weight, they're eating whatever they want, and they don't stay in shape. And so fight camp comes, and it's a very aggressive change and shift in how they've been living. Yeah. And so in a sense, spiritually speaking, we need those fights to keep us spiritually fit and to keep us in shape because we can very quickly get like a lazy, out of shape fighter that is not prepared for the fight. And then all of a sudden it's fight day and you're like, oh no, we got 20 extra pounds and I haven't run in 7 months and I don't know what's going to happen. You know?
Right. Not looking good.
Not looking good. Not a victory for me. Right. So we need those moments. And I do think we often shy away from those because we feel afraid that we're unskilled or we're not going to be fit to the task. And so we're quick to be like, send somebody else. And the Lord is like, no, I picked you. And yes, it's hard, but you need that for your faith to energize it, to walk in your calling, to be grown and to do, new things.
Yeah, absolutely. That made me think of the last part of the verse in James. So that, hold on, it's at the end of verse 4. Let endurance have its perfect result so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Yeah. Like the goal is for us to become more like Jesus. The goal is for us to be holy as he is holy, to be sanctified. And this is part of it. Trial is part of it.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it would be great if I could just like read the Bible and absorb everything and like, okay, I'm never gonna like,
Right.
I've learned everything. Sometimes I've prayed like, God, I just don't want to learn by going through something hard. I just want to learn by reading your word. But like, it's just not how it goes. Like, I'm not like, it's not going to take root. It's not going to produce the fruit it needs. And that's because of me, like, because I'm the problem.
Yes.
But the goal is for us to be more like him.
I mean, it says in there that even Jesus learned obedience through suffering.
Yeah.
It says that. So if he was perfect and he didn't escape suffering,
Right.
like, who do I think I am?
I know. Right.
But we have to care enough for that end part, for the perfect and complete lacking in nothing.
Yeah.
We have to care enough to have fruit. We have to care about righteousness. That has to matter to us. And I think if it does, then we will despise trial a little bit less.
Yeah.
Not that it won't be hard, but we recognize, Lord, I know you're doing something in me and I surrender to this moment. I choose to let you do your work. I will surrender, let it. I'm going to let it have its work.
Yeah.
Help me to let it have its work, because I do ultimately care about being perfect and complete, lacking in nothing.
Well, and that is how we can consider it all joy. Like in being surrendered to him, in realizing and trusting who he is, that his motives are pure, that his motives are love. And if we can get our heads and our hearts around that, like, that doesn't mean it's not going to be hard, but you can consider it joy because you can be looking forward to what God is doing in it and is going to continue to do through it.
And it's okay to say, I don't like this, Lord, but I do trust you in it.
Yeah.
And I think that is our faith. That's the essence of faith.
Yeah.
I can't see how this is going to turn out. I don't know the fruit that you're going to produce, but you promised that you're not just going to allow things arbitrarily into my life, that you have a reason and a purpose for this. And sometimes we might not fully understand and see that until we get to eternity. You look at these Bible story characters, how could they possibly have known that they'd be written in the scriptures for our encouragement?
Yes.
But they went through, Joseph maybe didn't understand the years in prison, but they brought him to the palace ultimately. So there are times that we don't understand and we don't see, but God is working a purpose. So to be able to continue to trust, his hand, to be able to trust his heart, his motive toward us, his faithfulness, that is faith in the midst of trial.
Yeah. Remembering who he is and knowing that. It's interesting that you said that about Joseph. Sometimes I forget that about Bible characters, that oh yeah, they didn't know how the story was going to end. Like, I'm reading their story and I've heard it before, so I know it's going to go okay for him.
Yeah.
But they didn't in the moment, but they had to trust that God was going to do something better. And now we're here still talking about it and using it as encouragement for us. I love the verse in James that says, it's James 1:12. It says, "Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." So we don't necessarily know how God might use our story, for Christians down the road, or, even somebody that we're in life with right now. We might not know how he's using it, but we do know that once we have persevered under trial, we do have a promise of a reward with the Lord. We have that crown of life. We have eternity with him. It's going to be worth it. It's just, we have to keep that picture in mind.
Yes. And that's, again, there are certain things that you have to cling to, that it will be worth it. And I believe that this will be worth it. Whatever I've gone through down here, it's going to be worth it in the end. And and sometimes that's all you have in trial. Okay, this is not my home. And take me out whenever you're ready. It's fine. Take me home.
Take me out.
Take me home. I've run my race.
Yeah.
But knowing that there is something better, and I think there is thankfulness in that we can try to still have gratitude to the Lord. And that for me is something that when I have days that I'm really struggling, there are days that you can be wrestling through depression and just where you just can't get yourself, everything just seems like an extra effort, even anything, making food or getting off the couch,
100%.
Getting out of bed, where you're like, oh gosh. And you're just like, fix your face, fix your face, fix your face, But deliberately choosing to be grateful and choosing to find things that I am thankful to the Lord for, because there still are things, there still are reasons that he's good. And I think that's important in trial, because I think it also gets our minds off ourselves.
Yeah.
We're just get so tunnel visioned in adversity.
Yes, that's one of the things I think that makes it so hard, is because it's not just the hard thing we're going through, but then all the focus on ourselves makes it even harder.
Yeah.
It's we're making it harder on ourselves by looking at ourselves and victimizing ourselves and feeling bad for ourselves. And that takes you into depression, instead of getting your eyes on the Lord and being like, God, I don't know what this is. And like you said, I don't like it, but like, I need your help.
Yeah.
I need it.
And trusting in the end, I think that I need this in my character.
Yeah.
And or he's going to use this for his glory. And to surrender to those two things. Like, I don't see it. I don't know why. I must need it. Or you're going to use this for some purpose that I don't see.
Because if he is our Lord, then bringing him glory should be our ultimate goal. And we should be okay with that, if not excited about it.
Yes. And I don't know why I, in my finite little mind, think that I understand the world, the grand scheme of space and time,
yes.
and past and future, and how all those things should go together.
I know.
I always have a plan that's different. But stepping back and being like, okay, Lord, you're sovereign. Your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. And I can trust, even though I don't see. I trust you to orchestrate all things for your purpose.
Yeah. It's hard, but it's possible.
And it's worth it.
Yeah.
And we need it.
Yes, absolutely. That's why he tells us, because he knows what we need. Well, I hope that this was an encouragement to somebody today. Maybe you're walking through something that's difficult or hard and you just needed some perspective. You just needed the word. I hope that maybe God shifted something in your mind and heart today, because he is there for you and he does love you and he is walking you through it if you will let him and if you will press into him. We will see you next month. Until then, walk worthy.